introduce myself usually at a sealing session in the Gilbert Temple. I will give a little disclaimer, so I'd like to do that here as well. I take no credit for why I'm here. I have no idea. I really don't. I think my claim to fame is I was a street fighter and a drag racer. And I'm just a kid from Holbrook. And that's about it. That says it all right there. And how I got here, I don't know. But I would like to share a little bit with you tonight on how I got here, if that's okay. And I'll do it rather quickly. I brought all of this stuff, really as objects. Last couple of nights ago, 3 in the morning, I get this wake-up call from the Spirit that's not unusual for a patriarch. And I get those occasionally. And this time, the word came, legacy. Talk to them about leaving a legacy. You know, the youth are marvelous. They have the most incredible spirits. They were reserved for this time, and they are remarkable. Sunday, I placed my hands on the head of one young man, and 30 minutes later, he said, "Was that 10 minutes?" 30 minutes in a portal with Heavenly Father and trying to interpret the feelings. When I was called, there was no training. And so 2 weeks later, I'm in my home, and here's the little girl sitting there ready for her blessing. I have no idea what to do. They just said this, make sure that you declare their lineage. And when it came time to declare her lineage, the lineage I thought would certainly be what came out of my mouth was a lineage totally different. It was like I just put my finger in a light socket. I thought, oh my goodness, what have I done? So I'm here tonight to tell you that, well, there's hope for all of us. But let's talk about legacy. Now, how much time do I have, Bob, or Gene? I don't know that I even asked you. 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour?
Whatever you feel good about.
I'm going to start over here. Legacy. This is preserving the legacy. What is it? It's a trust. I'm not an attorney, although I was chosen on one of the steps to my conversion. I was chosen, remember where I was, because I'll forget. I was chosen to represent Holbrook at Boys State in Flagstaff. And there I received a certificate signed by the governor that I was licensed to practice law. Could you imagine what I could do with that? I mean, where was I again? So this is preserving a legacy. This is where we start. We want to preserve the earthly calling of legacy, the earthly foundation of legacy. Starts here, and it's going to grow. What are you going to leave behind that you want to be remembered by? When I seal a couple on the 3rd floor in the Gilbert Temple, I will ask them at the end, everybody's gone. They're now husband and wife, and we'll come to the altar. And I'll have them stand there looking at the eternal mirrors, right? You have those see, I started in Mesa too, just so you know. That's where I started, was as an ordinance worker in Mesa. And we look at those eternal mirrors, and I ask them, what do you see? How many generations ahead of you do you see? Of course, they can't, do they? I think they're right, to be there all day. And the next question is this: How do you want your legacy to read together as a family? Well, you just got married. You don't know yet. So maybe that's one thing that you might want to think about, is every choice, legacy is defined by choice, isn't it? We choose. We make choices, and our legacy starts to unfold. You might want to know that every choice you make will help define your legacy. So that's number one. What are you going to leave behind? I started writing, I don't know why, but I felt like I wanted to leave something behind that would give my posterity some idea of who I truly was. Now, there's probably 20 of these in a box hidden away. I want to be really dead I want to really be dead. I do not want them to know all of those hidden secrets. You understand? They had no idea what their mother and I went through. They had no idea that I had severe depression for many years through trial. They had no idea. Well, I have a daughter here. I guess I can't tell you too much. So, journal. Keep a record. I think that's scriptural. Keep a record. Now, I brought this for Bob but if you look down there, it says Toronto, Canada. These are my missionary pictures. And I wish you could see this one. Right there where my finger is. Those are my parents and I at the Flagstaff Airport. What do you notice about them in their showing of their arms folded? What do we do when we fold our arms or we see something, right? You know what I'm saying, right? Isn't that interesting? They both had their arms folded and their minds were about as closed as you could ever have your mind closed. And the only reason I think that they were there, supporting me at that time, was because of Grandma Whiting's trust, missionary trust fund. Yes, you see, when I joined the church, everything was cut off. Schooling, financial, you're on your own. You gotta make those kind of decisions, make them under your own roof. It took me many years to understand they were just trying to protect me. They loved me so much, but they could not come to grips with the fact that instead of me becoming the great Mason, I can't remember now what you even call it back then, but I was destined for it. Great poopah of the Masonic Lodge. And when I defected to the church down the street, they did not like it. And the night of my baptism, they left and went to Phoenix and left me a nice little note that said, "Have a Merry Christmas. Your presents are under the tree." You know, you don't even need to feel sorry, because I had no reservation about what I did. When I came out of that water, the street fighter and drag racer in me was forgiven. And I knew it. That wasn't the last of my sins, but that was such a marvelous feeling to come out and know I can start anew. So journal, just along the way. Saving the Liberty Bell. Now that's a bit of our history. I don't know how I found it. Somehow I found it online. I was searching for something, and I was searching my ancestor's last name, Mickley, And I came upon a ad that, or something that just said, saving the Liberty Bell. And reading it a little closer, I discovered that the Liberty Bell owes its safety to my relatives. John Jacob Mickley and John Jacob Mickley Jr., father and son, saved the Liberty Bell. You see, when the British were coming, they were going to take every bit of metal and melt it down and use it for ammunition. The Liberty Bell was one of those. And my relatives hid the Liberty Bell in a wagon and got it out of Dodge. Anyway, so that's legacy.
What year was that? Does it say?
It says September 1777. And they have John Jacob Mickley and his namesake son were among the colonists who helped covey more than 700 wagons loaded with bells out of Philadelphia to prevent them from being melted down. Mickley's wagon held the State House bell, later known as the Liberty Bell, which was stowed with others in Allentown after General George Washington's defeat at Brandywine. Isn't that wonderful? That's legacy. I'm very proud of this. I don't know how it happened. It says that Charles Malone, Latter-day Saints, was the Religious Services Volunteer of the Year, 2016. I spent 5 years in prison. I love to tell people that. I spent 2 years as a high counselor. I walked into I was serving as a baptistry coordinator at the time with my wife, and I walked into the office of the stake president, and there were about 11 men in his office, in the high council office. And I felt like this is a trap of some sort. I don't know any of them except for my stake president. And they called me to be the host high counselor for all 11 stakes, part of this coordinating council. What they didn't tell me was that the wild west of prison ministry had never been tamed. So you could actually go from Casa Grande and go to a church service, see someone that you know, and call them to be a mentor in the prison. And that was it. What about calling my bishop or my stake president? Yeah, come on, we'll take care of that. They didn't tell me that. So I served 2 years as a high counselor and getting those keys restored, and then they called me 3 years into the branch presidency of a new branch in the prison, plus the juvenile detention center. Oh, I love that. I loved having stake presidents with me, taking them out and driving them home, and listening to the silence. They wouldn't utter a word. I mean, it was like everyone. And then you would hear, what am I going to tell my counselors? What I just felt. How am I even going to tell my wife what I just experienced? You see, that's Satan's lair, but the power of the priesthood walks in and it parts. All except for the one time we had been petitioning for so long. I wanted to give them blessings, and the warden would not allow us to touch their heads. Finally, after 2 years, our last year, he said, okay, I'll give you 30 minutes once a month. You can do 6 blessings. And we always had 6, every volunteer, everyone. here we are in the dining hall. You can hear the noise going on. They're washing the dishes. They're getting ready for the next group. The very first inmate, I placed my hands on, surrounded with with the counselors, and I placed my hands on his head and began the blessing. I knew I had 5 minutes. And then I heard a noise, kind of like a buzz of some sort. And then it came in my nose. And another one came on my eye. And another one came in my ear. And another one. And before I know it, I got all of this. It was like a pack of flies had hit me. Do anything to distract. You know, you talk about the mist of darkness, right? Lehi's dream, man, there was no mist, man. These were flies, and they were mad. I mean, it was quite interesting. That's a step. That's a step in preparation, I think, for what was to come. You don't know what's going to come. I mean, I love this phrase. I taught at the ALA seminary this last week. And I said, Lord, I don't know what to teach these people. What should I talk to them about? Teach them they don't know what they don't know. Have you ever heard that saying before? You don't know what you don't know. And I think we know a lot. But what we don't know, maybe with such clarity, is what does Heavenly Father have in store for me? How can I form the legacy that will be remembered? And I know each of us have thought of that as we've advanced in our age. How can I want to be remembered that our names are in one of the cornerstones of that Gilbert Temple, because somehow somebody asked us, would you like to have your family in a cornerstone? We were called to be one of the 5 or 6 couples, I guess, that helped coordinate the open house. And that was just a very nice gesture. It's a nice legacy moment. And the Gilbert Temple will always be a legacy moment for me and my family. I gotta talk about this. Okay, so I thought as I come over, I said, I gotta do 2 things. One, legacy, but the other, I've got to show them how they can write their first book. You all have to write a book. You all have amazing stories to tell. You do. You do not want to pass into the other life without having a story book, something about you. So this is my daughter Brittany. She came up with it. I got to give her credit. She came up, gave us this gift, and it said every week you're going to get a question. And you write that question down and store it. And at the end, after a year, you'll have all of these questions in this little index, table of contents. You'll have all of those with questions, with answers. What kind of a child was I? What was one of your favorite children's stories? Oh, I love that one because I searched around and found the picture of Peter and the Wolf. I mean, I love the music of Peter and the Wolf. What were your grandparents like? Oh man, I mean, I didn't write a bunch on that because I didn't know. And on and on and on. When I gave each of our kids a copy of this at Christmas, and I just gave one to each. I think it might have even been your son that said, I didn't know Granddad did those things. Legacy. Write a book. How do you write the book? Storyworth will have they'll do the book. You just write the answers and send it in. And they send you back a marvelous book. I mean, feel that. That's a solid book, man. I'm telling you. You could see, my Methodist Sunday school teacher threw a Holy Bible at me. I didn't die, but she knocked me out. If she would have thrown that at me, I probably would have had. 40 years later, or 50 years later, after that incident in the Methodist Sunday school, I'm in Holbrook and said the closing prayer at a funeral for one of the Hewards, who are my relatives. And I'm outside, and I'm kind of seeing, my wife comes over and she says, your Methodist Sunday school teacher is here. Brothers and sisters, I mean, I'm talking 40 or 50 years later. I said, really? Mrs. Gilbert? Oh yes, she's here and she wants to see you. I'm watching, the crowd is parting, but I can't see anybody until she gets right about to here, and there she is, about that tall, on her walker, and she gets right up to me, looking at my belt, gives herself a push-up. You were a naughty, naughty boy. Never said, how are you? Hi, Charles. No, you've changed. You were a naughty, naughty boy. And then she just walked off. Not one more word. 2 weeks later, she passed away. 2 weeks, she was gone. I imagine that had been with her for so long, and she just saw the opportunity. Father, now I can go. Take me now. I'm good. Okay, let me just see here. I had some thoughts, and maybe I did. Okay, thank you. Good timing for this. In this book, well, I just finished. Well, that's the last one. This is the one that I just published. This has this saying that I would like to read. In my readings and study for trial, I came across a marvelous poem, Prayer. It's attributed to Sir Francis Drake. I assume that he wrote it, an English sea captain during the 1500s, and it fits perfectly into my book on winning through trial. I love Sir Drake's words of pleading to disturb us, Lord, from becoming too worldly, too satisfied with ourselves, too content, and too safe, because we chose to sail too close to the shore and never risked having Jesus Christ be our captain and lead us into fulfilling the measure of our creation of becoming all we were blessed to be. Disturb us, Lord, when we are too well pleased with ourselves, when our dreams have come true because we have dreamed too little, when we arrived safely because we sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, Lord, when with the abundance of things we possess, we have lost our thirst for the waters of life, having fallen in love with life, we have ceased to dream of eternity. And in our efforts to build a new earth, we have allowed our vision of the new heaven to dim. Disturb us, Lord, to dare more boldly, to venture on wider seas, where storms will show your mastery. Where losing sight of land, we shall find the stars. We ask you to push back the horizons of our hopes and push into the future in strength, courage, hope, and love. This we ask in the name of our captain, Jesus the Christ. Don't you love that phrase? Disturb us, Lord. I loved it so much, I could not stop myself from writing my own. Disturb me, Lord. Wake me up, Lord, so that I can realize the greatness within me. Get my attention, Lord, so I can focus on things that matter. Shake me, Lord, from blazing my own path of life, so that I may learn of God's plan for me instead. And shake me out of my comfort zone to gain a broader view of life. Remove my fear, O Lord, from meeting the storms of life head on, because doing so will give me power to develop my mastery in the form of gifts and talents that have not yet shed the cocoon enveloping them. Allow me, Lord, to build my faith as I dare to fail, leaving behind the security of the known for the opportunity to expand and evolve in the unknown. Push me, Lord, by expanding my belief of how far I can go in life with you as my co-pilot. Help me see hope, even where others see none. Show me the path where angels walk, that I might find my way back to thee. Encourage me, Lord, to develop these spiritual gifts I have within me of showing strength while in the storms of trial, having courage to rise again after failure, having a vision of hope to see the win after the storm, and a heart full of love for the journey. And finally, disturb me, Lord, if I am found to dwell upon the persuasions of others, to settle for anything less than my best at becoming all I have been sent here to become. Amen and amen. I chose to be an ordinance worker in the Mesa Temple. My wife had served as an ordinance worker for 2 or 3 years before I did. I thought I was too busy. But the Spirit said, serve. So I gave the Lord Fridays. People were off doing whatever, I had that analogy in my mind. That was the least impactful for me in my business. I was full-time. I am known in the Mesa Temple as the brother who created the wave in the ordinance in the endowment session. 2 weeks after being called, Lloyd Rapley said, "Chuck, I need you upstairs to run one of the sessions." I said, "Lloyd, I don't know how to do that." He says, "Well, you've been to an endowment session, haven't you?" "Yes." "Of course I've been to an endowment session, but I don't know what they're doing, what they do." And we'll just go up there. I'll send one of the workers with you, and he'll be in the back, and you just watch him. He'll tell you what to do. I mean, when do you raise the scriptures? He said, "Don't worry, we'll take care of it." You know where this is going, don't you? I start the ordinance, the endowment, and I look back to see my companion. I am on my own. Anytime it mentioned scriptures, I raised them. Anytime, so we had people going up here and then down there and then up here, and it was like the wave, and I created the wave and then the Mesa. I also saw angels on my very first time at the East Desk when the door opened, and this marvelous halo of above young angels as they walked into the baptistry. Just flooded. I wanted to grab the phone and call my wife. Said, "There's angels on the east side of the temple. I just saw them. They just came in." You remember right? The sun comes up a little bit there, and then it just right behind them. In the Gilbert Temple, we have room 5 at 4 in the afternoon. I become very, very angelic. Colored stained glass windows right behind me. The sun's now setting, blasting those rays through the windows, and I look very nice. Okay, let me just talk about books real quick. The Lord wanted me to write this one. I'll never forget. There were some things leading up to that. I wrote an article. Again, I haven't told you much about the trials and the struggles we were going through. It's all in the book. I had one of the sealers tell me the other day after he read, he had read this one, then he read this one, or this one. Anyway, he said, "Man, you sure, you're not afraid to be transparent, are you?" I said, "Listen, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for the trials. But I know that the Lord expects me to share what I've learned. This is not about me." And honestly, there's really no money in books. I know there's other places that you probably want to put your time if you're in it for the financial gain. But this is about legacy. This is about creating something that you and the Lord can partner with. Just think of that, because He wants you. He knows you, and He knows the talents and abilities you have. Now let's work together to find what they are and let Him help you develop them. This book came as a result of me being out of work for 2 years. Nobody was building, nobody was buying, and this was in the very difficult 21% interest rate times. I had to choose, and I chose to try to find another avenue. And I thought, well, I'll be a copywriter. So I answered an ad as a copywriter. And the editor actually wrote me back, and he said, send me what you've written. Well, I said, I haven't written anything. I write contracts. So she sent you a copy of a contract I wrote? We didn't have the printed forms back then. We had to write them ourselves. He says, send me. So I made up I had just gone to the temple that morning in Mesa, and I was up at 4:30 and driving in, and and I thought, I'm going to tell him about my story. At least it'll be a missionary story. I told the story, wrote it, sent it to him. He sends it back and says, I think you might have something. What would you like to write about? And so we went through that process. I ended up, because he was from Yuma, I ended up writing about the Yuma lettuce days. Yeah, I went all the way to Yuma. I interviewed everybody I could. I took pictures of lettuce. I came home. I wrote this article and I sent it back into him, and I thought, oh dear, Yuma lettuce days. At least I wanted a catchy title like Let Us Something, right? He sent it back. And he said, I'm going to use your photo as the cover of the next edition, the winter edition, and your article will be the lead article. Now, brothers and sisters, I'm human. I'm telling you, man, I found it. Yeah, I can do this. I wrote that article, and he never paid me. was a paid professional. I couldn't say it. It was just so interesting. I tried to get it paid, but he just never would pay. Anyway, so I went on and I wrote. We had our daughter and her family living with us, battling cancer. I had no income coming in. It was just one of those very difficult times. And I decided to write a book. In fact, I decided to write an article and send it to Deseret News, and I wanted to call it The Sweetness of Trial. Because I had just experienced something that was so unique, on my knees, pleading, and then this feeling washed over me that was like nothing I've ever felt in my life. It was absolutely the feeling that the atonement was real, that Father knew of my plight, and that all would be well. I immediately started writing, sent it to Deseret News, yeah, and they published it. And I wrote another. One of the ones I wrote was how Dutch oven cooking and eternal life. I sent that into Deseret News, and they just laughed. I mean, they thought this was the neatest thing because they're going to publish it, and they got all these responses of people that never thought of eternal life and Dutch oven cooking. And I wrote that while my wife and I, she and I, were up in the White Mountains learning how to cook with Dutch ovens. So I kept going and doing these. Every article I submitted was published. Can you imagine that? I mean, it is like, what? Well, then they dismantled their operation and whatnot. Anyway, I then went on, I think I'll write the book. And I went into my office, I had a whole stack of resource books. And I just started typing. And that book came within days. Because it was something I already knew. I knew about the trial. I knew about the struggle. I knew about the losses. And I knew about the wins. And that's what that book, I'm embarrassed, but you need to know what, this was the first edition. I went through the traditional way and had it published by a publisher. I ended up buying it back. I wanted the rights, and that's the second edition. But all of these were published in the first one. The Sweetness of Trial is a powerful reminder of how the Lord allows us to learn through our suffering. It also gives power to the thought that in our darkest hours we're carried beyond one's strength. I love the author's ability to teach me once again that I am never alone, and I bear testimony of the fact that these things that I have suffered and continue to suffer are not in vain. In the end, it will be the reliance on God that has carved me into this person I am. Thank you, Chuck Malone, for this spiritual reminder and for your quality of expression through the written word. Here's one that just touched my heart. As I read through the first part of the book, I was touched deeply. It was obvious that Chuck and his wife had experienced great trials. They had experienced their own refiner's fire. It just so happened that at this time, I and my wife were going through the trial of our son being murdered by his wife and her lover. We were searching for understanding to know what we needed to learn from this, if anything. And even through our trial, though our trial was different than what Chuck drew from in his book, his perspective and what he had to say about trial was very helpful to me, and I found myself drawing strength from those experiences. Another, The Sweetness of Trial was well worth reading. From the shiny blue pickup truck and the bull elk that crashed into it, to the ice cream parlor story of Chuck's manager who ran out on him the first day of ownership, Chuck's stories of personal trial were captivating and left me wanting more. I absolutely love this book. It was brilliantly and beautifully written. I take no credit, and that's my wife. No, the things. Chuck has such a gift for making things clear and real. Thank you for blessing my life and helping me learn from your experiences how to have the proper perspective with my personal trial. All I needed was one. All I needed was just one of those, and it would have been worth it. And that's what I felt through this whole thing. The next one I wrote, I thought, I want to try my hand at a fiction book. What should I write about? Well, I don't know. Aren't you supposed to have a plan? Yeah, that's what it says, but I don't know. Well, what are you interested in? Oh, I like mystery. Okay, let's write a mystery book. Where do you want to start? I don't know. You know, my uncle, Gordon Swadsworth, he was a detective in the Watts district. Oh, you have that in you. Oh, let's write a book about detective story. All right, where are we going to start? Well, let's start downtown Phoenix. Because I know, you used to be down there, and you know how that is, and da-da-da, and so I said, okay, here, well, who should we have? Well, let's have a couple. That'd be a partner. And it just went. What did they do? They got a call. Well, what did they call? Well, then they had a son, and the son happened to be going to school at Piney Falls, AKA Flagstaff, but don't tell anybody. I was a floor detective for Babbitt's department store. I had a magic mirror closet. The magic closet. I could watch my friends steal from the shelves, and then I would make my way to the front of the store and arrest them. I was a very popular young man going to school at the Flagstaff. That's where this came. And then Mormon Gold. And then it just, and I remember screaming from my office, yes, it closed. She thought I was talking about an escrow. No, the cycle of beginning to end, it actually made sense. That book has, a lot of people have really enjoyed that. I was in one of our meetings at the temple, and one of the presidents was talking about a family that had just come and some of the things that they'd gone through. And it just hit me. That'd make a great book story. And I just started with it. I've never been to Guatemala. I have no clue what I was writing about. If you like to follow reality, my wife wouldn't read it. It's too raw in the beginning. It's a tough book. It's a real book. But it ends. Well, it doesn't even end. So if you're looking for something that would keep your attention and keep you in suspense and just kind of like, oh my goodness, is this never going to, oh my goodness. Oh, somewhere along the way, I think it was one of the years that we were studying the Book of Mormon, I decided to write my own Book of Mormon bedtime stories. And so I went down to the printer and had him print up a bunch so that I could give to each of our kids. And I, had some little graphic art things put in there. And I go through a chronology, unlike the Book of Mormon. I straighten it out, and I have it all chronologically. And at the end, I have this little paragraph or two that will talk about if you were reading this to one of your children at the end, and you said, during our life, we're often called upon to do things for which the purpose is not immediately clear or understood. And so there's a little couple of paragraphs at the end that give the whoever's the reader a little opportunity to teach. And then finally, and then this one. This one I prayed for because I spent many, many years learning how to recover from trial. And I share 7 of those ways with you in big print. Big print. Big spaces you can write in between. What are some of the winning ways? Oh, the first one you will love. Did you call upon God when trial hit? When trial hits. Let me get to where those gifts are. And then seek the best gifts. Without battle, there is no win. Attitude begets behavior. There's some amazing teaching going on in attitude, on how to maintain attitude during the trial. The Lord taught me to look for opportunity. When trial happens, this is nothing to run from, and it is everything to look for opportunity. A young lady in our office lost her 1-year-old to a crib death. I could not call her. For 2-3 weeks, I couldn't call her. What am I going to say? Finally, got up enough courage and hugged her. I don't know why this happened to you, but here's what I do know. God trusts you enough to give you this experience so that you can save others just like you. Now fast forward 4 years, she's now pregnant again, and she is part of a group who minister to, she's not a member, who minister to parents who have lost children through this disease. Prophecy fulfilled. Isn't that interesting? How the Lord will use us. Brothers and sisters, I know I'm out of time, and what's this? Oh, my psychology class 101. If you want to make an A, you'll teach yourself how to draw. This is the worst one. All the others are hanging in my children's. I got an A, and she taught me how to I could do something, whatever I put my mind to. Let me finish with this. There's nothing greater in our lives than legacy, posterity. I try to help the youth understand that earth is just a moment. It's important to us, yes, but it's just a moment. Prepare now for when you come forth, the morning of the first resurrection. Well, it isn't in my Patriarch blessing. When you were baptized, that opened the gates. You're going. You're coming. Yes, you'll be there. The first resurrection, the morning of the first resurrection, is reserved for celestial bound. Who's the Lord going to use, brothers and sisters? When the gates of the millennium are open? When my Methodist friends now all want to meet Christ and hear and know? Who's the Lord going to send out to gather them? His covenant people, I promise. He will send you out to teach. You will go into the universities. You will go into the synagogues. You will go into the Methodists and the Presbyterians, and you will teach and bring them by the hordes. This earth life is preparation for that. Nothing more, nothing less. We're going to learn. We're going to gain a lot of experience, but it's all going to help us over there, not here necessarily. I want you to know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I take no credit for this. I look at this and I think, just kid from Holbrook, drag racer. I was up before Judge Shelley many times, street fighter, couldn't keep my hands off, you know.
How did you join the church? How did you come from the Methodist to join the church?
I hit bottom. The Lord sent me into the prison for 5 years so that he could teach me, this is where you were headed, Chuck. And I hit bottom. And I woke up after the stupor and seen that I caused. And the Lord said, this is not who you are. And I chose a different path. I called Bishop Shreves on the phone, still in my pajamas. And I said, Bishop Shreves, I want to be baptized. And he says, Brother Malone, this is the happiest day of my life. And it wasn't easy. Doubted it. I've never had. A year later, I was in President Monson's office in Salt Lake City at his request because he saw that I was going to his mission that he had just come from. And he asked if he could set me apart as a missionary. And the Lord's, again, tender mercy to just say, I know this has been tough on you, Chuck. Let me give you a little something that you can say, he knows me. When I came out of that endowment, 2 sessions, live sessions, back to back, hadn't eaten, I had no idea what had just gone on. I know I probably laughed at Satan when he came out and did his thing. Back then, you know, it was live. And I know I probably fell asleep because I couldn't keep my concentration. But there I was in President Monson's office. I married the bishop's daughter. She kept me between the white lines all 57 years and counting. I made a great choice. I was called on a stake mission almost immediately after I got home. You see, the Lord knew, I got to keep this kid busy. I got to keep him active. I got to keep him involved. And somehow that has worked. He has me now. Brothers and sisters, I appreciate so much being here. I know I probably didn't tell you exactly what. Any questions? I mean, that's a great question. Do I have time for a question?
Did your parents ever join the church?
Great, that is a great question. No, oh no, nor my sister.
Have you done the work in the temple?
Oh yes. I sat in the endowment session. My dad was people would come, usually the workers would come to our house at night, knock on the door, ask for a beer, a little money, a little something. My dad never turned them down. Such a good man. I remember going into the session thinking, I'm going to see angels today. This is going to be marvelous. I am going to see angels. My dad will have them so, it's going to be great. Not an angel one. Not a one. At the end of the session, I wanted to stand up and say, no! Where is he? So I get dressed and I'm going to the parking lot. And I turn in the corner. I'm on the south parking lot. I turn the corner and there's this little bench there. Feeling says, sit, you better sit. I sat, thought about this. And this marvelous feeling came over me and the words, your father wanted to be there, but he was just so busy. That would truly be him. And he thanks you. That was it. I feel pretty comfortable that they've accepted the gospel on this, and having accepted that work. I have pretty too. Any other thoughts? Yes,
You said you've been working in the Gilbert Temple.
yes.
My best friend works there as a sealer, and he recently lost his life. I wonder if you know him.
What's his last name?
Matheson, Derry. Matheson.
I think maybe early on, I'm trying to remember where he was there. Was he not from, served from the Mesa group that was with us?
Yes.
Yeah, and but he's no longer with us, he's back to Mesa, I believe.
No, he's still at the Gilbert Temple.
He is? Oh, so he must have moved in, okay, well, that's wonderful. I have a shift on Tuesday and I rotate on Saturdays and I sub and I don't meet everybody. You know, but I do remember the name, I just can't picture him.
Well, he's a rabble rouser like me, so it's probably good you don't know him.
We don't want to get too many rebel rousers on the third floor, do we? Any others? Thank you so much, Brother Lewis. And may I offer you, I have these made up, and if you would like a copy, they tell me we can't sell books in the church, so I brought a little card, and on the back there's a QR card, if you know what those are, and you just put your phone up to there, it takes you right to Amazon, push the button, and away you go. And you can choose whichever book you would like to have delivered to you. That is there, and if some of you would like to have a copy of that, you're certainly welcome to do so. I also have these share story worth with a friend. Again, I didn't put the fact that I gain a little bit from this. I just wanted to find a URL I could give you so that you wouldn't have to go hunt and look, just make sure you got in the right one. If you use that URL, I do get a free book and you do get a discount. So they make it good for both of us. So we have these up there as well. If you'd like to look through any of this, be my guest. And again, I thank you so very much. Yes.
I have a friend that lost her husband several years ago and extremely struggled. Is that the best book that she could?
Oh, yes. Yes.
That's the
Yes.
best book to give her?
Yes, the couple that lost their son, that there is much about understanding that trial and why, and tasting the sweetness, even in the loss of a loved one. Yes, thank you. Okay, I turn the time over to Brother Lewis. Thank you so much.
Thank you very